Ladies and gentlemen, you might have never heard of the Office of the Independent Regulator, which is possible because it only started earlier this year, established by the Tasmanian government. And to find out more, let's have a chat with Louise Coe. Louise, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to speak with you and your listeners.
Now, tell us a little bit about the organisation let's find out.
Okay, so as you said, the Office of the Independent Regulator started in January this year at the same time as the legislation which governs what we do in our office. So without making it too boring, we've got legislation that creates a child and youth safe framework for all of Tasmania. And this is to address the issues coming out of the Commission of Inquiry that was held over the last couple of years, and a report came down towards the end of last year. And it's really saying that many organisations across this beautiful state have not been doing the right things by the children and young people that engage with them. So this office is completely independent of government, and our role is to roll out the child and youth safe standards and also the reportable conduct scheme. And the other part of that framework is, as an independent body, we will oversight where there's allegations of harm to children and young people within organisations. And then there's a power that I have which allows me to share information that relates to the safety and well-being of children and young people.
Now, you were saying that organisations not doing the right thing. What can we say? What did they do wrong?
Look, I think and it's not just Tasmania. There was the Federal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse, which ran for 8 to 9 years, and they showed the systemic failure within organisations to protect the children that they're meant to be serving. And those sort of failures look like when there's an allegation that a child might make, that not being recognised as an allegation or not being taken seriously. Some organisations have this closed shop mentality, so the parents and community can't inquire as to what's going on within the organisation, and that creates risk to children and young people. There's leaders are not buying into what it means to be a child-safe organisation, and that can result to them, prioritising their reputation rather than looking at, hey, what do we need to do to keep children and young people safe here? And then there's, the more boring sort of things about policies and procedures. Like, you might have a good policy, but if you don't talk to your staff and talk to your children and young people in the community that you're within, does this work for you? Does this make sense? Do we need to change anything? Those policies are useless. So it's really taking all the negative things they saw in the Royal Commission, the federal one, and flipping them into positives. And that's where you've got the child safe standards.
So what would you say are the key ingredients for a child and young people's safety? What are the main?
Well, you know what? A lot of people say, we need to listen to children, but children and young people are not going to talk up about what safety means to them unless they feel empowered to do so. And by that I mean, if they know how to raise an issue and they're comfortable that if they do raise an issue, they're being heard. So if an organisation, we'd say we do participation really well, our children will buy into certain processes, and it'll be like, well, how are they buying in? How are they expressing when they feel safe or things they do or do not like? And it's about that piece is really important because we need to listen to when children are saying they don't feel safe.
But you would almost think that young people in today's world in 2024 compared with, say, 40, 50 years ago are more outspoken and dare to speak up, isn't it?
Some are great. Some are, prepared to speak up. But are we actually listening and taking on board what they're saying? So if children are saying the same thing over and over again, but the rules aren't changing or the process isn't changing, or they've got concerns about a particular worker, but no one's listening to that, then it doesn't really matter how much they speak up if we're not actually listening.
Now you're talking about organizations. I guess it also, yeah, it's the same almost in a home situation, isn't it? It's like,
Look, you've got home-like environments for children that are in out-of-home care, and they're very much captured by the Child and Youth Safe framework as well. So organisations that support carers, as well as the government agencies that provide the carers and place children with them, they too have to comply with the Child and Youth framework. And in terms of what happens in the home, it's like it's creating that environment where if a child doesn't feel safe at home, if they're at school or if they're at a sporting club and they've got concerns, hopefully they feel that there's someone in that organisation that they trust, that if they raise an issue with them, they'll be taken seriously.
Because this is also, Louise, that we all live under a lot more pressure in today's world. It, of course, doesn't help with like a family environment with for kids and young people.
Of course, there's always pressures, and that creates different priorities. And it's creating that safety mechanism that if something happens, whether it's intentional or unintentional, there's an avenue for a child or young person to raise a concern or to get the assistance they need. And then there's requirements on organisations, the heads of organisation, to take steps to look into what that disclosure might be about and to see if they need to do something further.
Now, you're coming to King Island next week and you're travelling the state. Give us a bit of, tell us a bit about it. What is the plans?
So we're coming there on Monday afternoon, and we're doing a community session on Monday. And it's really just an introduction to this office, the Office of the Independent Regulator, and explaining a bit about the Child and Youth Standards and also the Reportable Conduct Scheme. So the Reportable Conduct Scheme puts obligations on heads of entities that if there is an allegation raised against a worker in their organisation, the head of entity must report that to the Office of the Independent Regulator within 3 days of them knowing. And then there's processes that kick in from there. So it's to capture those sort of allegations where things have been complained of or community have complained and it looks like nothing ever happens. So that's the framework. We're going to run through the standards, and we also want to work with the people that do attend, that if they're representing an organisation, they can create their own statement to child safety, and we'll help them through that process.
Is it also, but for me, it sounds almost a bit like, well, people that are mostly involved with this then is going to be like teachers at schools?
Not just teachers, like there's sporting clubs, there's probably council activities. It's really anyone that's involved in an organisation that has a child or young person membership. They should be coming along and looking at what they're doing and whether they think, if they critically analyse what they were doing in their organisation and looked at their processes and their policies, whether they would say, yes, we're meeting the standards, we're doing all the things that we can, allowing for our resources and our staffing base, whether they're volunteers or paid employees, that they're doing all they can to keep the children that come in contact with their organisation safe and free from harm.
And safe also means, I guess, not only speak up, but also in general know how then to deal with young people and children then, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like when we say safe from harm, it's all types of harm. There's not just physical, there's emotional, there's neglect, there's psychological harm. So there's all different categories of harm that a particular event or experience can do damage to a young person's trajectory and their well-being.
How do we look after, say, for instance, that a child has a complaint about somebody? Now, we live a bit in a world, and you see it through social media also, that before you know, as an adult, you can be accused of something. You've got this big mark on your forehead, and how to deal with that, because that's the other side of it, isn't it? It can be so sensitive.
There is both sides. So first of all, you need to have a process that if a young person or child does not feel safe, they can raise it. But then if they do raise an issue, as the head of entity or the head of the organisation, you then have an obligation to investigate whether that was true or false. And that's part of the reportable conduct scheme. So that's where our office comes in, and we can guide organisations on the steps they need to take once an allegation or a disclosure has been made.
Mm-hmm. So for those that attend the sessions next week, it's more to get the information about guidelines, how to deal with situations, and find a solution, isn't it?
It is, but it's also for our purposes. We want to know what the community organisations on King Island need from us to help them comply with this framework, because it's mandatory. They have to do it. So the scheme started in January this year, but on 1 July this year, clubs and other bodies and smaller associations come into the scheme as well. So we're really mindful that a lot of these organisations are volunteer-based. People don't have a lot of time to, spend on these sort of matters. And so we really want to hear from organisations. How do you want to learn about the scheme for us? Like, yes, we can come and visit, but maybe you want something online that's short or sharp, you want animation. It's really like, how do you want to learn about the scheme that resonates with you and your organisation?
What is the government planning, you think, Louise? Because they provided $1.5 million support to open the office, to have it all going.
Yeah.
Are we then talking about one financial year, or is it going to extend, or what's the future plan?
Well, my contract's for 5 years, Wade, so I hope it lasts 5 years at least. But yeah, no, the scheme is, there's similar schemes in other states and territories. The Victorian one has been running for nearly 10 years. Their child safe and reportable conduct schemes coming up to 9-10 years. It's also running in New South Wales. So hopefully this is a long-term commitment, because it really provides that safety net that if we had a commission of inquiry in 3 or 4 years' time, it's not going to be the same kind of outcome as the one that wound up last year with 191 recommendations. Like, hopefully we're actually creating a safer environment for our children and young people.
Now, we're going to run the information in the screen in a second, Louise, so where people can, how they can book and how to get further information. But what you're saying actually is that anybody out there here on King Island, if you are dealing through your organization or club or whatever with young people, with children, join in, because you might learn something.
Yeah, we hope you do learn something, and we hope that what we provide is really practical advice. And even if the session you have questions afterwards, we're doing that initial connection that you'll have contacts to reach out to when you have questions, or if there's something that you need advice on. So our key message is, please contact us, please engage with us and let us know who you are, and we can help you if you need our help.